Hello and welcome to the qualifying edition of this weekend's Race Weekend's data analysis for the Imola Grand Prix, and what a qualifying we just witnessed. So unlucky for Mr. Lando Norris. He could have been on the front row, but instead it is Sergio Perez from Lewis Hamilton on pole position. But if you have not seen the practice edition of this Race Weekend data analysis, please just take 12 minutes of your time to check that video out. The aim of this series is to collate all of the data from the practice sessions, the qualifying sessions and the race, and basically compare each of the teammates to see how well they performed overall, and then mush all of the data together into one big whopping algorithm to decide the driver of the weekend in a video that will come out probably Monday or Tuesday, whenever I've had time to crunch all of the numbers. But today it is the qualifying edition, so we will take a look at the qualifying data, and we will begin with the sessions, and we start with Q1, and out is the two Alfa Romeos, the two cars that actually seemed likely to get through into Q2 ahead of the two Williams, but no, they are out in P16 and P17. Then come the two Haas cars and Yuki Tsunoda, who had a small little accident coming into the last chicane, I believe it was, just got a small snap of oversteer and then slightly overcorrected and rear-ended the barriers. A possible gearbox change in which he'll receive a 5-place grid penalty, but he's already starting at the back, so that doesn't really matter too much. And then we head on into Q2, and it is topped by Sergio Perez. However, he was not comfortable on the medium tyres, and he is on the softs going through. Lando Norris equally on the soft tyres as well. I am not 100% sure on Charles Leclerc, but I would imagine he too is on the soft compound tyres. However, Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen and Valtteri Bottas are all on the mediums. Then it was Gasly, Ricciardo, Ocon and Stroll who all made it through, with Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari just 600 of a second out in Q2. Then come the two Williams with Vettel splitting the two, and then Alonso, the first time he's been out qualified in over 20 races. I think they said it was 27 in qualifying, the first time since 2017 or something like that, which is quite a lot of races. And so from Q2, this led us on to the final top 10 shootout, in which it was Lewis Hamilton who claimed pole position number 99. He is just one away from a century and Mercedes' first pole of the season. And Sergio Perez is P2, the first time he's starting on the front row of the grid, followed by Max Verstappen, who had a little bit of an iffy final lap. He could have gone a little bit quicker, perhaps, not 100% sure. Then Charles Leclerc, a mega P4 in the Ferrari. Gasly, an even mega, if that's even a word, P5 for Alfa Tauri. Then Ricciardo and Norris, heartbreak as his final super fast lap that put him P2 was taken due to track limits. Valtteri Bottas struggling down in P8, Esteban Ocon P9, and Stroll failed to set a lap time, again due to track limits. But like we did in the practice edition, mushing all of these times together into a graph, we can see the driver progression throughout the time. Unfortunately, there's a little bit of spread, as the slowest time by Nikita Mazepin was a 76.8 or something like that, and the fastest time was a 74.4, so there's quite a large little spread, so we can't really see all of the intricacies, but we'll take a look at those when we go into the teammate breakdowns a little bit later on. But now isolating each team's improvement, so this is just mushing all of the teams together and taking the fastest times for each session to work out these next graphs. We have the most improved from Q1 to Q2, and actually Mercedes lost time going from Q1 to Q2. Alpine gained 0.2 all the way up to AlphaTauri gaining 0.6 from the session to session. And then from Q2 to Q3 we have McLaren and Alpine both losing time, and Mercedes themselves gaining 0.4 of a second, whereas what we saw 3 weeks ago in Bahrain from Q2 to Q3 was Mercedes not gaining a significant amount and Red Bull gaining the most overall. It was kind of a almost reverse of what we saw here. And so from these most improved graphics, we head on into the Mercedes team breakdown and the battle between Bottas and Hamilton. Bottas looked so comfortable in Friday, not so comfortable on Saturday morning in FP3, and then come qualifying, it just fell apart. He lost a significant amount of time from his Q1 time to his Q2 time, and then he just couldn't find anything, whereas Hamilton had a significant 0.4, almost half a second gap from Q2 to Q3. And in terms of the head-to-heads, it is all very much Lewis Hamilton, whereas if we were to take a look at the practice head-to-heads, it was very much in favour of Valtteri Bottas. Not so much to say in the gaps here, other than the fact it was slightly above average for Lewis Hamilton to be 5 tenths faster than Valtteri Bottas in Q3 compared to his season average so far of 3.5 tenths, and it was the first time in Q1 that Valtteri Bottas led the Briton. And so from Mercedes, we take a look at Red Bull. Now this was so much closer than people were going to be expecting. Sergio Perez throughout Friday and even Saturday morning did not look like he was very comfortable in the Red Bull, but he managed to stick it to Max Verstappen and actually out-qualify him. The first Red Bull driver to out-qualify Max Verstappen since Daniel Ricciardo back in 2018. That is absolutely ridiculous. Just by the slimmest of margins, half a tenth of a second. And even Max Verstappen's average over Sergio Perez in Q1 was not as large as his average overall so far this season. That has massively come down by just over a tenth of a second. And heading from Red Bull, we take a look at McLaren, and honestly this is so gutting. We could have seen a McLaren on the front row next to Lewis Hamilton, a British front row lockout. That could have been amazing, but instead it was Daniel Ricciardo who once again out-qualifies Lando Norris for the second time so far this year by just half a tenth of a second once again. But Lando Norris absolutely destroyed Daniel Ricciardo so far this weekend in all of practice and even qualifying so far. On average, he was just over 4 tenths of a second between Q1 and Q2 ahead of the Australian. But hopefully their race pace looks as good as their qualifying pace, so we should see some very good battles, especially as Gasly is up ahead of them and the Ferrari of Leclerc as well is up there. So possibly a podium is a little bit far out, unless of course there is an incident at the start of the race, who knows. And then heading from McLaren, we take a look at Aston Martin, and I don't know, it's just so disappointing seeing where they were last year and then seeing them fall so, not even graciously, not even gracefully either. They're complaining, they're moaning, all the way down to the bottom of the midfield they go. But it is Lance Stroll who is dominating Sebastian Vettel, who just doesn't have a comfortable hold on the car as of yet. However, even though Lance Stroll managed to get into Q3, he didn't set a time due to the track limits issues that have been a little bit on the strict side, or very much on the strict side, how they should be. It's just going to take a little bit of getting used to for every single team. And then from Aston Martin, we take a brief look at Alpine, and this is the flip of what we saw 3 weeks ago in Bahrain. It is Esteban Ocon that is dominating the Spaniard of Fernando Alonso in every single session. Alonso didn't even make it through into Q3 like he did 3 weeks ago, and on average it was about 4.5 tenths that Esteban Ocon had over Fernando Alonso, which, like I mentioned, is the first time that he is ahead in this season, so we don't really have any averages to compare just yet. This graphic in the bottom right, the average will get better and better as the season progresses to see how better or how good this Grand Prix is, or how bad the Grand Prix is, depending on how well they do. But interestingly though, we have seen an Alpine pop into Q3 in every race so far this season. It's just been one or the other, but not both at the same time. And from Alpine, we head on into the Scarlet Ferraris, and they had so much promise coming into this Grand Prix from practice. They looked so very strong, but unfortunately Carlos Sainz just missed out by 0.06 of a second. It is one apiece in the head-to-head for each driver in Q1 and Q2, but in Q3, the one where it matters, it is 2-0 in favour of Charles Leclerc. And on average, it's about 4 tenths that he was in front in Q2, and then obviously Q3 there was no gap to take, which is higher than his Q2 average across this season so far. And then from the Scarlet team of Ferrari, we head on into Alfa Tauri, and again, just heartbreak for Yuki Tsunoda in a race where they easily could have got both cars into Q3. Hell, that's even what I predicted in my predictions video. That's not going to do well for my bold prediction statement there. But anyways, there was a small little accident for Yuki Tsunoda, so no time to get through. However, we have seen some small inconsistencies with Mr. Yuki Tsunoda, so perhaps he may not have got into Q3, we don't know. But Gasly, very, very strong in all of the sessions to put that car P5. definitely, hopefully he can have some better luck than last year, and he can actually deliver some decent points. And from AlphaTauri, we take a look at Alfa Romeo, and this is where my graphs and my panels, especially for qualifying, start to look a little bit thin for the teams that don't get through to Q2/Q3 as much as the rest. It is Kimi Räikkönen that is actually in front of Antonio Giovinazzi this time by just over 1/10 of a second, and for the first time this season he actually outqualifies his teammate. But other than that, there really isn't much else to say other than they really should have had both cars into Q2, but that's the way Formula 1 goes sometimes. And from Alfa Romeo, we take a look at Haas, and again, it's a little bit on the sparse side. Both cars were out in Q2, or Q1 even, sorry, not Q2, they didn't even make it through, and it is once again Schumacher that is ahead of Mazepin for the second time in a row. By about 0.5 of a second, this is a little bit less than what he had in the first Grand Prix, which was about 0.8 of a second, if I remember rightly off the top of my head. Still a significant margin to hold over your teammate as an average across the two races so far of 0.6 of a second. That is quite a significant margin. And then finally we take a look at Williams. Now both cars made it through to Q2. This isn't something we see very often, especially with Nicholas Latifi's performance, and it looked so very likely that George Russell was finally going to be outqualified by Nicholas Latifi, but he put in a stonking lap to go well inside the top 10 on the medium compound of tyre in Q2. It was absolutely ridiculous to see that. He then comes out on the soft tyre, doesn't quite go much quicker, or I think, did he go quicker? I can't remember off the top of my head. But he did enough to beat Nicholas Latifi in Q2. Mr. Saturday has really earned that title today. And there we go, there is all of the qualifying data looked at. I will begin to start crunching all of the numbers to determine the driver of practice and the driver of qualifying, but all of that will come in a slightly later video after the race. But please let me know in the comments down below what you thought of today's qualifying session and your heartbreak for Yuki Tsunoda and also Lando Norris. If you feel heartbreak for either of those drivers, it would be a bit ruthless of you if you did not. But yeah, please let me know what you guys think, and also what you think of the video as well. If you've agreed with anything that I've said, let me know as well. But that's all I've got for you today, guys. I hope you have enjoyed, and I will catch you in the next episode with whatever and whenever I decide to make it. And I'll see you guys then.